Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, the show that gives you a virtual seat at the bar for the real conversations that happen between entrepreneurs. I'm interviewing all kinds of business owners, from those just a few years into freelancing to CEOs helming 9-figure companies. If you've ever worried that everyone else just seems to get it and you're missing something or messing things up, this show is for you. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. With me today is my new friend, Deanna Seymour. Say hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. It was a journey and a half to get here, too, because we had scheduling snafus and miscommunications, but we made it. We're here. We're having the chat, and I am so excited.
We persevered. I love it.
We persevered. I talk about this all the time on the show, that like shit's just going to go wrong. You can't be too hard on yourself. Just find a way forward. It's the way it's got to be. So tell us a little bit about your business and what you do.
So I'm a graphic designer and content marketing strategist who helps people bring their content to life with a lot of rich, bold, quirky, sometimes visuals. So the visuals is like where my heart lies. But I kind of help with some other stuff too. So that's what I
love
do.
That. It's interesting. Well, because they don't get to see the video. It's just for me. Be jealous. I'm looking over your shoulder in the background to this big, bold graphic that says, "What the heck?" Which,
yeah, my one of my good friends, Kate Duffy, made that.
Oh, fantastic. So what got you into this line of work? How did you get to visuals and strategy?
Well, I have been an art teacher for almost 15 years. I feel like I lost track because by the end I was like really tired and burnt out. So who knows how many years? Over 10, probably less than 15. And I taught art in high school and then towards the end of my career, elementary school. And then I was sick of it. I was done. So I was like, okay, what else can I do? And I had, while being an art teacher, had like a million different side hustles, you know, Etsy shop here, this thing here, like painting murals here. So I feel like I had all these different businesses, ADHD, hello. And then I was like, oh, actually, I could help other people market their businesses and live vicariously through them. I can just see one business through, but feel like it changes enough so that I'm still interested. So,
yeah. I noticed that a lot with some of the entrepreneurs, and I, probably like attracts like is a little bit at play here because I am also very ADHD, but I've seen that, like, I think that that's a brilliant solution for, I know that I'm going to get bored with this. So what kind of variety can I build into this thing so that I can actually focus, like trick myself into focusing?
Yeah, well, and I feel like everybody talks about niching down all the time. And so I feel like at the beginning, I was like, okay, the world can't handle it if I do more than one kind of design. And then quickly realized, like, no, they can handle it. It's fine. Because I was like, I am so bored just trying to stay in one little tiny lane. So now I'm like, visuals, that's enough of a thing. Content and visuals, like, good enough. We'll go with that. So,
yeah, as long as you know how to talk to the people who are attracted to that and want to work with you, that's perfect. Like, yeah, I resist with every fiber of my being niching down. And I think it's probably ADHD shit too, where I will be so bored.
Well, yeah. Well, I kept doing it and then I would like change my mind. So then it was really confusing, I feel like, for my audience also, for me to be like, here's what I'm doing. Okay, no, wait, I got inspired. Here's what I'm doing. I'm not doing that. Like just trying to pinpoint it down. And I'm like, what is the common thread that goes through all these things? That's what I do. And don't try to make me narrow in anymore. I don't want to.
I love that. I think that's a brilliant solution for a very real, very common problem that we don't talk about enough in business. There's just this need for stimulation for those of us who are a little neuro-spicy.
Yeah. I mean, I will admit that as a freelancer, sometimes when I'm in the middle of a few different projects and they're kind of, I'm doing this for this, but I'm doing videos for this person. I'm doing, a logo for this person. I'm doing whatever. I'm kind of like, okay, I understand why people niche down so that they're just like doing what, like it would make my systems on the back end a little easier for my brain. But then the problem would be, I would be so bored, I would change it anyway. So you just gotta go with how your brain wants you to do things. Yeah,
I love it. Like play to your strengths and play to your weaknesses almost in effect, and create systems that help you cope with them and maybe even turn them into a strength. I like this creative problem solving. That's what we're going to say.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And I also think sometimes when people talk about like their systems and their, everything's running so smoothly, sometimes I think, and I'm sort of going out on a limb here, a little controversial, And maybe this isn't for everyone, but I do think sometimes it doesn't take into account what the customer actually needs, because people are like really optimizing their business for like, here's what I do, here's what I offer. And they don't want to deviate from that. But like, not everybody needs exactly the same thing. Yeah. And so I feel like a little flexibility, like I'm kind of learning to rein it in a little, like to get, like you're saying, solve it for my own brain and rein it in a little, but be flexible enough that I can actually do what my clients need, which what a random idea in online business.
That's a sacred cow I am happy to stomp all over. The notion of prescriptive coaching, which I have ranted about at length. The idea that there's one solution that works for everybody just like chaps my ass for some reason. So a little Southerner came out just then. I don't know why. There's that, the prescriptive coaching. And then it's funny because with the coaching clients that I've had before, they often get frustrated and tell me if this sounds familiar. They go, just tell me what to do. And I go, I will not. And if I did, I would be doing you probably the greatest disservice of your life. I will tell you things that I have tried. I will ask you what feels good and what instinctively you're leaning toward in your business. But like my whole goal here is to get you to trust your own gut, because I can help you build a business that Angie likes. But will an Angie business work for you? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. You do, though.
Yeah. It just takes a second to get there sometimes. And you do feel like if you just had somebody tell you what to do, it would be quicker and easier. But I do feel like it ends up being longer in the long run, because then you do the formula and then you're like, oh, I hate this. This is boxing me in. This doesn't work for my brain. This doesn't. And then you have to backtrack and actually go back and do the work that you're asking people to do at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then it kind of like, this is probably the wrong way to say it, but it was like, it almost absolves you of the responsibility a little bit to foist it off on, hey, I got this great plan. They told me step by step what to do. It didn't work. Oh, their plan was bad.
Yeah, that's true. I've never thought about that. It's easy to be like, oops, not me, not my problem.
Yeah, wasn't my fault. And it kind of gives you an excuse, a reason to not look critically at whatever happens. Because I think this was the biggest learning of my copywriting career back when I was still a copywriter, was that often we'll look at a big thing, the whole thing is a failure if this one aspect of it failed. And specific to copy, I would turn in drafts to clients who would look at this and go, I don't like it. That's it. It's a ground up rewrite. And I would dig in a little bit more and be like, what don't you like? Specific. It's okay to tell me certain words. It's okay to highlight an entire paragraph. If you tell me you hate this and you never want to see this on a draft again, this is all good information for me to have. You are not going to hurt my feelings. And so we would get in there, we'd dig in deep, and we'd find out that they were challenged by like 2 lines. And I would delete those lines. And suddenly they loved everything about it and went, this works. And I was like, right, see, we don't have to throw everything out just because something was feeling a little bit off. And it's the same with this. This is no shade to anybody that has gone to somebody else for a business plan, but like always train yourself to look at your piece of this. Where could you do better? What can you learn from this experience? And then I think that makes you a winner in the long run.
Yeah. And like we've been saying too, like working for your brain and doing all the stuff for you, it's like more sustainable if it works with the way you work. So I like using it as like jumping off points, like a good skeleton, little formula. Like, how do they do it? Sometimes I find too, I don't know if you ever do this or if you ever found yourself doing this, but if you look to other people too much, I've done this. Like I go down the rabbit hole. It's on social media, or maybe I've like, for some reason that was participated in a bundle, or somehow I've gotten on too many email lists. And then I start to like, think I can't do anything. Like you get frozen. You're like, okay, I'm going to start a podcast. Now I have to get a court. Now I have to like look this up. When really sometimes you can just be like, okay, what do I need? Like you can sit for a second and be like, what do I think I would need? And you can check it. Yes. But I start to feel like I can't do anything unless I Google it first, or I want a sample. I want an example of what I should write. And it's like, I have to remind myself. You have the answers as a smart, savvy consumer. And this is you, dear listener. This is you, Deanna. This is you, Angie, listening to herself through her monitors. You have the answers, and you know a lot more than you're giving yourself credit for. And just because there are other smart people out there that have found a new, interesting way to position things doesn't mean that you don't know things. I was ranting with somebody the other night in the hot tub of all places. We were talking about a book, which I will not mention by name because I don't want to throw shade. That's not my style. But I remember saying, like, it's a very popular business book.
one of my friends who I really respect raved about it. So of course I immediately went out and bought this book, and I read it over the course of several nights, and I was pissed. And my friend goes, well, why were you pissed off at reading this book? I'm like, because that author didn't say anything I couldn't have. I'm pissed that I didn't write it. I'm pissed that the only difference between him and me is that he put out a book and I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
He built a platform and he owned his authority and I didn't. I played small. That's what pissed me off. There's nothing in his book that specifically was like a trigger or a douchey indicator or anything like that. It just pissed me off that this book exists and mine doesn't yet.
Yeah. Or I've taken a course before, I've signed up because I'm like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And I take a course and I finish it, especially like a short little one. And I'm like, oh, I did know how to do that.
Yeah.
And then I get mad at myself. I'm like, why did you just buy that course? Like, you could have totally done this. You just need to like slow down and think for 2 seconds, like, how would I do it? And then just like start doing it.
Yeah.
Like, magical.
That's why I love the importance of like learning to trust your gut for better or for worse. And I think it helps if you adopt that mindset, that attitude of, I'm going to learn something. I know learning isn't sexy, kids. I know it's not. We're banning books and all kinds of crazy shit I'm not going to get on that soapbox. But there is something to be said for the school of hard knocks, for the school of experience, and actually going through something and learning what you can. A lot of these folks that you're buying courses from, that's what they're teaching. They tried a thing. It worked for them. They turned around and taught it. You can actually do that too.
Yeah. And you could do it because your brain maybe will make up a new beautiful way to do it that could work for someone else. Like if you keep following everyone else's formulas, you're not like going to make up your own, which is another thing that I get passionate about.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think there's merit to both approaches, right? Because that's fun of telling my early coaching students that nobody needs a fucking triangle wheel. Nobody needs one. We've already established that there is a wheel and that it works really, really well. And if you want a triangle wheel, cool, but I'm willing to bet that most other people won't unless they're using it for like a weird art piece or something. There's probably still a use for a triangle wheel. Will you sell millions of them? I don't know about that. But you could invent your own take on wheels or your hovercraft, your next evolution or something like that. There is no need to invent your own version of this thing when you are just starting out and you don't know where to start. Try a formula, follow it, learn what you can, adapt, improve, overcome, proceed.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know that business is a windy road, and I think one of my biggest pet peeves is the fact that we get all of these miracle overnight success stories, right? So I imagine when you've decided that visuals was your thing, that this wasn't like magic fairy dust where everything is figured out now.
No, not at all.
Oh no!
Surprisingly, it's weird. So I can't write that in my bio, like 6 seconds to 6 figures. I can't say that because it would not be true.
It's so snappy, though. I wish it was true.
I know. No, I mean, it's funny because all the stuff that we're talking about, like I get a little ranty about courses because I spent way too much money on courses in the beginning. Just not trusting myself. Like, I mean, I told you, I was an art teacher for over a decade. And like, I'm buying courses on how to teach people online. And I'm like, I went to school for that. Like, I've been teaching people for 10 years. Like, why did I just spend $2,000 on a course that's going to teach me how to teach people when I've been a teacher for a decade? But I was like thinking, oh, well, this is online. So I don't know how to teach people online. I don't know how to teach grownups. Like, I only taught kids. And so I feel like those voices can get in your head and feel like, well, they know more. And when I say voices, I also mean sneaky sales pages sometimes.
Yes.
They sort of make you feel like this is going to be the answer. This is going to be my 6 seconds to 6 figures. And I'm like, okay, I'm a poor little teacher. I don't know anything about the business world. Let me buy this because it's going to work in 2 seconds and it's going to be super fast. And like, who doesn't want a bunch of fast money? I'll take it. Sign me up. But unfortunately, they got a bunch of fast money. I did not get what they promised me. And it took a few courses, and like, there's like 3 courses I took right away that probably add up to like $5,600, which on a teacher's salary,
that's
is a lot of money. Yeah. One of them I didn't even tell my husband I was getting. He was in the hospital at the time. He has Crohn's disease, so he was getting like a restructuring. I don't know, whatever. He was in there for a while, and it was the first course I bought. And I was like so naive. Looking back, I'm like, man, I got a lot more edgy and like a lot more mad now. But I had no idea that people would like lie, like straight up lie and be like, the cart is closing, and a month later I look and I'm like, oh, this is evergreen. Like that was a lie. So I thought the cart was closing. Matt was in the hospital and I just really thought like, this is what's going to like change our lives. Cause also talk about feeling stressed out. Like we're broke. He's in the hospital. We all know the fear of like, how much is this going to cost? Like medical bills, like you don't even know, grab bag, like you're just going to get stuff and then hope you can afford it afterwards. Like,
yep.
And so I watched this webinar and fell into the funnel and then the cart was closing and he was in the hospital. So I just, bought it without talking to him, which I feel like, I clearly remember the conversation in the hospital room where I was like, I bought that course. Sorry, like, oh, and he was like the parent who doesn't get mad, but is like, I'm just disappointed. Like he wasn't mad, which was almost like worse, I just felt
that's the heartbreaker.
I know. So, and like I said, it's wild because that wasn't my last course that I purchased, but it was like, part of my journey. I'm not too mad about it. I do like to help people like notice, like, is that really true? Do you really think that's gonna, because some of these sales pages are like very convincing, but also very like, how do you know that when they don't know anything about you or your business? I'm like, these are some pretty hefty promises for someone you've never even met that's just reading your sales page.
Right. I think that's why so many of us get uncomfortable with sales because of the times that we've been burned. But I'm like, if you know that that's something that's important to you, that's something that you can stand on. I decided a long time ago, I can't sell shit. I can't do it. If I don't believe in this product, you will not see my name attached to it, period. I will recuse myself. I had that happen where I had to walk away from a 5-figure retainer once when I had first interviewed with this particular client to help run his marketing team. I had told him, this is what I stand for. This is who I like to work with. And I like to feel good at the end of the day because I know how marketing has been used for manipulation, for evil in this world in the past. I understand how powerful this stuff is, and I want to do it to improve people's lives. So like, you've got good products. I like this. So he comes back to me a few months later and he wants to, I'm trying to figure out how to tell this story without giving away anything confidential. He wants to enter into a partnership to promote one of those big data aggregators. One of the, you know what I'm talking about. One of those big data aggregators that somehow has very scary details about your life. And I was like, okay, I'm going to keep an open mind. I'm not going to assume anything about this. I'm going to take it for the test run, use the login credentials. And sure enough, it had everything about me, enough to the point where I went and found one of those data scrubbing services and signed up immediately. Like I was that creeped out.
Yeah.
And I sat with it for a little while because I'm like, this guy's paying me a lot of money. Can I afford to walk away from a 5-figure retainer? This is, he obviously feels very strongly about this, like wrestling with myself, second guessing myself. And at the end of the day, I went, no, like, I don't feel good about this service. Sure, there are probably people out there that are using it for legit reasons and not nefarious reasons. But just the fact that I know that there are a lot more people than I feel comfortable with using it for nefarious reasons, using it for stalker reasons, is enough for me to say, I can't sell this. And I have no ill will against you, client, if you feel very strongly that you need to sell this, but I can't, and I can't be involved in this project. And I was, like, I know that a lot of people have an impression that I have no problem speaking my mind and saying whatever, but it took me several days to work up the courage to say that I can't be involved in this. And we wound up not being able to work together in the long term. That was, a different but related story around what we stand for and what's more important, money or people. But I'm going to fall down on the side of people every single time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's looking from the beginning, I was just like, but why would people do that? Or like online courses where I would start to feel like, do we care? Do we care if the person needs this course or doesn't need it? No, we just want their money. Or like, do we care if we can actually help them? Yes or no? No, we don't. We just want their money. Okay. Are we ever going to like know their name or know anything about their business? Like, no. Okay. It's just passive income. We're not going to like help them. So coming from a teacher background, I was like, all of this feels really wrong. Like we need to like actually care about our students and help them. And I know there's a place for courses, especially in the online world. But I feel like I have sort of like a scale in my head of like, how much time am I getting? Like, is the teacher even going to know my name? How much is it? Like, there's a lot of like $9 offers, $10, like 20, 50. Okay, cool. You don't have to know my name for $50. Like, that's okay. That's a workshop. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not psycho. I don't want everyone to know my name, but I think if I'm giving you a few $1,000s, I don't think it's like too much to ask for you to like know who I am or like what I do. I don't know. It just seems wild to me. Yeah. I crunched some numbers one time because I was an elementary art teacher. So I saw the whole school. So there was like about 500 kids. And I will say that I knew most of their names. And I mean, obviously, like each year I was there, like, then you only have to learn kindergarten. Like, you can keep building on what you know. My first year, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to know everyone's name? So, but I was like, okay, 500, like, I had 500 people in my sphere who I still kind of knew their names. And I knew who was like whose brother or sister. Like, we can do it. It's just, do they want to do it? Because they're like, oh, well, you can't possibly know everyone if it's this many students. And I'm like, I think you can. I mean, even when I taught high school, I had like 120 kids that I saw every day. That's a lot of people. I was like 120 people give me $2,000. I would love that. Like, you know, like, you can learn their names.
Well, yeah, and you can develop the skills to be able to prompt the folks that feel a little bit shyer, right? Because it's easy to get to know the people who are standouts, who are extroverts, who really, and this, it sounds bad, but it's not, that's not the way that I intend it. For like the people who recognition is a currency, like they really want to be noticed for going above and beyond, and that's very important to them. And again, that's not a judgment. I have definitely been that me, I have the answer person in a class before. So like, if you can get past those folks who will step up and make themselves known and reach out to the people who struggle to be known or they're uncomfortable being known and make them feel welcome too, then you've got something really special.
Yeah. I just like care about, it's like, I'm like, so sue me. I care about people. Sorry, everybody. Like, I started in the beginning of this journey, I was kind of like into online business. And then I was like, okay, I got to get out of here because I do care about people. And I guess that means I'm bad at business. And so I did kind of step away a little. And then I came back and it was like a whole new world. Like, I took 6 weeks off of all social media. Ooh. And I feel like when I came back, I guess I taught the algorithm that I like, you know, people like you, like online business, like rebels, anti-hustle, like all these different things that I was engaging with. I guess the algorithm learned like, okay, Deanna likes these people, not these people. And I was like, okay, I can breathe. This feels good. This feels like people, like you were saying, kind of, it turns your stomach. Like, then you think you hate sales. Yeah. And now I'm like, oh, I want to make sales all day. Like, I can make you beautiful graphics. You're going to be so excited. Like, my clients love what I make. Their stuff is popping. Like, you want to pay me. I love money. Yeah. Like, give it to me. Like, then I'm like, oh, it wasn't the actual like sales. It was the way the sales were being done that I didn't want to be a part of. And I'm like proud of myself for not wanting to be a part of that. Because, you know, I found myself on that end of the internet when I first started out too. I wound up in a very like masculine sales forum, full of what I like to call the dick slingers. And I thought that was just how business was done. Like, we all brag about how big it is. We whip it out and we show each other what we've accomplished and, you know, what we've been given naturally. I didn't enhance this or alter this in any way. And then it just so happened, you know, thankfully, like I said, I don't think any time that you spend anywhere is wasted as long as you are taking that, I'm going to learn something from this. I'm going to learn something that I can use from this. I think that's where a lot of people get messed up and drop out, is that they find themselves in a bad experience and then they go, this was a failure, instead of what can I learn? So what I learned from that community is there's still good people even in a community like that. Find them, build relationships with them. They will lead you out to other people like them, because birds of a feather flock together. And so that's like, if you've got a series of bad clients, you need to get rid of the bad clients because they're bringing more bad clients to you. That's the newsflash. All you need is one good one and the courage to say, hey, do you know anybody else? Like, anybody else floating around in your circles? Because I happen to ridiculously love working with you. And I figure you've probably got friends like you that I would enjoy working with too, and who could probably use my help. Would love an introduction if you've got one. Yeah. That whole ideal client avatar thing, that was really like confusing to me in the beginning too. But now that I have clients, I'm like, literally, I can like, in my mind, I'm like, it's these actual people that I work with that I'm like, you
Yes.
are my ideal client. Like, please
Yes.
refer me to your friends. It's exactly what you said. But until I had clients, I was like, I don't know, anyone who will pay me money is my ideal client, like in the beginning. And then you can work your way up to being like, no, this is the kind of projects I like working on. These are the kind of people I like working with.
I think that's where everybody starts, like whatever will get me money. Because I know I started there too. I was on all of those like freelance sites, Upwork and Elance, and I think that's what became Freelancer. Whatever. There's a whole bunch of them. You know what they are if you're listening to this. And I got paid to do editing people's manuscripts and screenplays. I got paid to put together people's business plans and to write a live production script for the Miss Black USA pageant. Anything anybody would throw money at me for, I would write. And as I started to take on more and more projects, right, I think that's kind of the progression. If I could dare simplify this a little bit, you jump in and you take anything that will pay you. You fill your client roster, you overload yourself, you start to burn out and go, this isn't the thing. What needs to change here? And then you can step back and look at, I like this project, hate that project, like this person, don't like that person, and start to make some, instead of guesses like you would if you're jumping in trying to figure out your ideal client avatar before you've ever done any work. You're actually using real data and real experience to go, that's not working for these reasons. This is working. I think these are the reasons. How can I find more of this thing that's working? And then you start to stumble your way toward clarity and a niche of some sort.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's funny too that you pointed out kind of getting to that burnout place, because it's so easy to hear people say like, oh, like I started to notice everybody's stories were like warnings of like, this is going to happen. So raise your prices or do whatever. But I kind of feel like you almost have to like do it yourself. Like you almost have to go through it, because I do feel like everyone's story is their prices are really high now, but they talk about the time when it was too low and they got burnt out. And I'm like, I don't know, because sometimes I'm like, I think it's okay to start with low prices and get burnt out, because you feel good when you get that money, like even though it's like not enough. But then when you start feeling like resentful because you're like, wait, actually my stuff is good. Like I think about it like hairstylists. I had a friend who was an apprentice, and so she cut my hair and it was like $25. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. You understand our aesthetic. Like maybe she's not technically the best yet. She's still learning. And then we kind of like lost touch. I mean, she went to a salon like out in the suburbs and I lived in the city. So I was like, oh, okay, she's way out there. And then before my wedding, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to her because I'm going to treat myself. I know she's at the fancy salon now. And I remember I brought $100 bill. For some reason, I don't even know why I would have had $100 bill, but I was like, I'm going to get my hair cut and I'm going to get a product. Like I really thought I was like living large. I was going to treat myself. And then the haircut was $85. And I was like, oh my God. But, you know, a little bit of time away and a lot of practice later, she's doing that. And I mean, I got married almost 8 years ago. And now she's like $250 a haircut. So I'm like, it's okay to be it's okay to be an apprentice. And I would absolutely feel like I was an apprentice when I started. That's why I bought the courses, because I didn't feel like I really knew what I was doing. And now I know what I'm doing. So I charge more and I have less clients and it's awesome. But I think everybody kind of has to go through that growing pain.
Oh, I totally agree. I you know, if you think that you are above going through this, I'm going to ask you, what happens when you tell a small child, don't touch that, it's hot. Don't touch that, you're going to burn yourself. First of all, you've just made touching that thing irresistible by telling them not to. Second of all, they have no idea what hot is. They've never experienced it before. They don't know what a burn feels like and why it should be avoided. They don't have the context. So I'm not saying we need to go around burning small children. That is not what I'm saying here at all. But what I am saying is sometimes you have to touch the stove and get burned to understand what hot means. And so I will never tell you that it is a mistake in the course of your business to take on too many projects, to burn yourself out, to take on too much work, to take on the wrong work. Like all of this is part of the process that helps you to understand what these business coaches are saying, help you understand who you can help the best and what's suited to you. Like it's all part of the process. You're not doing anything wrong. That's the lesson here.
One time a business coach was like, okay, so what are you going to charge for that? And I was like, I guess this much. And she was like, okay, why? And I was like, I guess because I love underpricing myself and overgiving and then feeling resentful. Like I was like,
oh my gosh.
okay,
Wow.
I need to raise it. Like in the conversation, I was like, I'm doing it again. Like I'm giving away too much. I know I'm going to be mad because like I kept scope creeping myself because I get excited and I'm like, oh, I have a new idea. Like now we should also add this. We should add this. And I was like, okay, how can I need some verbiage to be like, hey, also, I thought of this cool idea. If you would like to do it, just let me know. Like I can like add it on if you want me to. But I just kept adding and being like mad at them. They didn't even like ask for it. So funny. I was like, what am I doing to myself? I can't stop making cool things.
I'm so glad that you brought that up because that is such a common trap that I see people falling into. And I've definitely been there myself before, but it's like we love these people. We love the work we're doing. We want to keep them happy for a long time. We're excited about this new thing we're doing. So we offer them things that they didn't ask for. And then the resentment starts to creep in. And like, that's just such a simple thing to fix that we often just feel like, but if I ask them for more money, then that sales voice kicks in and says, well, but then they're going to think that I'm greedy and that I don't want to help them. Meanwhile, they're getting an outrageous advantage for being able to get all of this stuff that you would charge other people for free. So like, I mean, I remember running the math with a very, very smart friend of mine who was like, had a huge retainer with this person. And I'm trying to like anonymize details here too. It was like, basically your retainer equated to, they had you full time working on their stuff around the clock for less than 50 grand a year. That sounds like a really great deal for them. And I had to point that out to them that like, do you feel good being reduced to that and recognizing how much you're giving and not being compensated accordingly? And then having them like make extra demands on your time because that's what they think they're entitled to. Like it's all a learning process. You're in business with humans. Humans make mistakes. Humans say the wrong thing, but like we ultimately are responsible for teaching other people how to treat us. And if you treat somebody that all you have to do is ask and I will bend over backwards, that's what they're going to do because they're humans. Wouldn't you do the same if you were like, well, I can get this free resource. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and ask. I'm going to ask for that. Yeah.
Or especially like with me, I'm like, no problem. And so they're thinking like they're trusting what I said. Okay, it's no problem. Deanna doesn't care. She's fine with it. And on the other side, you're like, oh, mad. So yeah, that's something I've definitely had to learn the hard way. I'm like, were you just talking about me? Because that happened to me early on too. And then when I actually approached them about it and was like, there needs to be less work or more compensation and I was still like new. So I was being flexible. I was like, or like looser turnaround times because they were also getting pretty tight with the deadlines, which I'm like, well, now I feel like you're basically boxing me into like when I have to work. When I'm a freelancer, I should be able to do it. Like, so there was like a few options on the table. And then the next day I got an email saying, we will no longer be needing your services. I was like, okay, well, whatever. But at least I was like, thank goodness I'm out of there. Like, I don't want to keep doing, I couldn't keep up with it. And they kept adding and they would have just kept adding until I said stop. And the interesting thing too, oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, well, they, when I came in, they said the last designer left them in a lurch is how they put it. And so I was doing a lot of work to like make up for the last designer leaving in a lurch. And then I was thinking after I got fired, oh, is that what happened to the last person that left in a lurch? Like they said, whoa, you're taking advantage of me. And then you just got rid of them. And then you found the next sucker in line until I was like onto it. I mean, I guess that's the way they could run it, but it's tricky. And again, I'm just naive. Like you just don't know. We don't know what you don't know, you know? Now I would spot that way earlier.
Yeah. And that's, that goes back to the context and that goes back to trusting the value that you deliver to people. Because I think that oh God, there's so many good themes that are coming up. I'm having trouble picking the first one I want to explore. One, if you're listening to this, odds are you grew up in a capitalist society like I did, which is where, at least here in the United States, we were raised to be very good employees. So most of us have, and I know how to think like an employee filter, meaning if you're entering entrepreneurship for the first time, you don't know how to think like a business owner. You only have an employee filter. So you might be making decisions like working for someone full-time for less than a full-time wage, being available too much, taking too many calls, taking too many meetings, adding on too much extra work, because that's what you've been trained to do as a stellar employee. it also means that the person on the other end who is taking advantage of you in that way, and they may be doing it consciously, they may be doing it unconsciously because they also have an employee filter, right? They're walking a very dangerous line, especially here in the United States. They're opening themselves up for lawsuits and litigation for treating you like an employee instead of a contractor. And I think when you spoke up and said, I'm a contractor, and I have my own business to run, and these are my terms. And they went, oh, you're not behaving like an employee. You're done.
Yeah. You're going to be a pain in our butt. Out of here. Yeah. Yep.
It's not that hard to hold those boundaries. It's just very uncomfortable. And so one of the easiest scripts that I teach people when they're facing scope creep is like, yeah, I'm happy to add that in. So what I can do is it'll be this price. I'll start on that as soon as we finish this piece of the project, and I can have that to you by date. How does that sound? And it's easily 50-50 that they go, sure, add it on, send me the invoice. Or they go, oh, crap, I didn't know it was going to cost that much. Never mind. It's not as urgent as we thought. So like putting a price on something, and notice how none of that was like, listen here, fuckhead. You don't get to add more work to my plate. I didn't come at it from a defensive. I came at it from assuming that they know they want a thing, and they understand that they're working with an independent contractor, and that I get paid for the things that I do for them. And this is a thing that I would be doing for them. So if all of this logic holds, then I get to tell them that thing will cost this. Let me know how you'd like to proceed. And if they have a reaction to the thing costing money, they're either being wildly inappropriate and ridiculous, or it was just like a naive, oh, I didn't know that cost extra. Okay, cool. That's fine.
Yeah,
we don't need it.
Like you're saying, I don't think it's always like someone trying to like literally be a creep when they're scope creeping. They have an idea and they're like, oh, what about this? And sometimes they have, like you're saying, they have no idea. So I think that's a great way to respond.
Yeah. 9 times out of 10 clients have no idea how things work. And I think that's another big trap that we fall into as especially creative service providers, that like they know how to work with a designer, or they know how to work with a copywriter. I know I had this big fantasy of I would find clients and I would somehow sell them on services I didn't know to offer yet. And they would just come to me with assignments and tell me what they needed done, and I would go do it, and it would be fabulous. I have since learned that is not the way. Children, that is not the way. You have to come to them and say, okay, so this is who I am. This is who I help. This is how I do the thing. Here's what I need from you to make that happen. And I basically have to grab their hand and say, hey, we're going to climb this mountain together. Come with me. I'll show you how.
Yeah. Well, as a designer, it's funny because sometimes like there's not like a specific right answer. And coming from an art teacher background where I encourage children to like not make it just like the example, like it's hard for me. Sometimes I want to show them extra options. And I'm like, you know what? Their brain can't handle it. Like I need to sit here. I need to pick the best option. And that's because that's what they're paying me for. But it is tempting sometimes. Like I'm like, oh, but what if they might like that purple better or whatever? Like I want to show it. And I'm like, you know what? It's just going to overwhelm them. They don't know what to pick. I just need to pick it for them. Just make it easier. Yeah.
It's so funny because I don't know how often I've talked about the pitchfork mob, which is another danger zone. If you go to freelancer groups online and you ask something like, is this interaction a red flag? Spoiler alert, almost everybody that's ever been burned will come out of the woodwork to tell you, it's a scam, you're being taken advantage of. And like what you were talking about earlier is that may or may not be true. We can't know somebody else's intentions because we're not in their heads. And if we haven't asked them directly, is this the intent here? Am I missing something? You're just assuming, right? And so it could be this instance of misunderstanding, miscommunication, and it could have been a relationship that you salvaged if you didn't walk in here like, look here, fuckhead, you don't get to ask me for more work. It's a completely different energy from, okay, cool. So I hear that you need this thing. Walk me through that. Like what led to this? Or sure, I'm happy to add that. It's going to cost this. Like be their partner that solves the problem with them instead of being the person that fights against them.
Yeah. That's a great tip. I'm like, I need to like write this down. I'm like, that's like one sentence. That's a really easy email reply to be like, yeah, sure, we can add that. It's just this much. Yep.
I like to think like the thing that helps me remember to get in the right headspace, especially when I'm getting aggravated is it's you and me versus the problem, not you and me against each other. And
Yeah.
that really helps me keep the right headspace, especially when they get frustrated because they don't know what I don't know. They're really excited about this idea, or they got a course too that tells them that they need to completely change direction on this project we've been working on for 6 months. So my goal is not to convince them they're wrong. My goal is to be their trusted advisor as somebody that they hired for my expertise. It is not to beat them over the head until they agree with me on something. So like I need to probably put this out as a lead magnet or something. I have like a handy dandy decision tree framework where I'm like, here's where I will fight for something with a client and here's where I will let it go. And hint, 80% of the time, it's a let it go situation. I want to pick the hill I die on, and it better damn well be important. It's not going to be a fucking Oxford comma. I'm not going to fight them to the death over whether the Oxford comma is a thing. I just don't care enough. And that is not going to impact my work enough to where I feel like wasting the energy on this battle. However, if they come in and say, we need to completely scrap everything that we've done and go in this direction instead, I'm going to say, okay, walk me through that. Help me understand. Okay, knowing what I know about that, here's the pros, here's the cons. Here's what I would do in your situation. What do you think? It's their business and their money, and they get to blow it up if they feel like it, but not without me telling them what direction I think they should go first.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I fell into that trap too of thinking, well, you hired me for my expertise and you need to listen to everything I say. No, you will never control another human being, not through a magic contract, not through the perfect persuasive words. You will never, ever control a human being, and trying to do it will make you crazy. Don't do it.
Yeah. Make them cranky, make you crazy. Like, it's not going to end well. Smart.
So I don't know why I got on that tangent, but that was fun. Let's go back to you and your business. I really loved, and what I wrote down here were two things that I wanted to circle back to: transferable skills and your little reset. So transferable skills is something that I want to shout from the rooftops, because it didn't occur to me that the way I think about this is a little bit different from the way I think most people do. When I got my first copywriting job, I decided I'm going to use everything that I've done to date as an example of why I'm qualified for this job. And I just wrote up a resume that said, yeah, I've waited tables. I've taught kids math. I've read scripts for studio executives. I've written rich kids' college papers. And here's why this makes me an excellent copywriter. I sold credit cards on the floor of Home Depot. Yeah, on the surface, none of these jobs look like they make any sense for what you're asking me to do. But here's why I am the perfect person. And it took about 300 applications before someone said, yeah, I can see. That makes a strange amount of sense. I would like to give you a chance. It's like, but I think we often underestimate, and that's how we fall into this, like, I need another course trap. We don't give ourselves enough credit for what we've already done and what we've already accomplished. And I just want to make that into a flag that I can wrap myself around in. You're already smart enough. You already have the skills.
Yeah. You probably learned the whole thing about letting it go from being a server. Like, you know what I mean? Like, all of those things add together to make you the amazing person you are, and do help contribute to all the work you do moving forward. Like, you've been talking about learning from your mistakes, learning along the way. So like, everything we learn brings us to where we are today.
Well, it's the same thing with what you said about, like, and then I realized I'm already a teacher. So like, why am I parsing this into, I'm a teacher over here, but I'm not a teacher over here, and it doesn't count over here, but it counts over there. Like, I was a writer when I was writing rich kids' college papers. Was it entirely ethical? I reconciled it with myself by saying, I'm being paid to write a thing. What they do with it is on them. There's a reason why I don't write rich kids' college papers anymore. You know, and now we have AI for that anyway, so I would be out of work. But
oh my gosh, I know.
Like, looking for reasons to do a thing instead of reasons that you're not qualified for a thing. That's my favorite creative exercise, and I'm going to highly recommend it to everybody listening.
Yes.
And then I also wanted to bring up the 6 weeks off social media, the reset, and unpack that a little bit, because, you know, we do talk about this in creative circles a lot, the need to actually build space to create instead of consuming, and the danger zone of becoming too much of a consumer. So like, let's dig into that a little bit. I'm just going to throw you into the deep end.
Yeah, no. Well, it was funny because it was actually it was the summer, it was May, and then school gets out in June, and I wasn't going back in the fall. So again, my poor husband, like, he's so nice. He was like, okay, I'm just trying to understand, like, you're going to start a business where you help people on social media, but you're going to get off all social media for indefinitely. Like, okay. is that going to work? Like trying to be supportive, but being like, what are you thinking? And I was like, I don't know. I just have to get off it. I feel like at that point I was on Facebook, and I feel like lots of people were saying, oh, you need a Facebook group. So then I was like, okay, I need a Facebook group. And then I was trying to plan it all out. So I didn't want to do it. So it was like, what can I do that's like Monday, whatever, Tuesday tips, or what? I was just trying to like automate it as much as I could because I didn't actually want to do it. And I was on Instagram, which as a former photographer and graphic designer, like that's kind of was my favorite place. And it still is, to be honest. And then I was on TikTok, and people were saying like post 3 a day. So I was like trying to do that because I was like, okay, the end of the year's coming. Like I'm not going back to teaching. Like I better hurry up and grow this business, And I just one night I remember we wanted to like watch TV, and I had to record one more TikTok really fast, my third one of the day. And it was like so silly. And I was like, what am I doing? I just want a break from all of it. And also like, honestly, even like cousins fighting about politics or whatever, like the world, I just was like, get me out of here. I need a break. And and I had an Instagram for my podcast and an Instagram for myself. It was like just too much, and I didn't want to do any of it. So I stopped it all, and I was like, I'm going to be on podcasts. Like that's going to be my way to get in front of new people. It's going to be fine. And I started like researching around and listening to more podcasts, and then like trying to like learn more about the podcast people. I would go to their website and then usually click on their Instagram. And eventually the computer was like, you need to log in. And I was like, oh, you're trying to bully me into getting back on Instagram. And then that made me even more mad. So then I stayed off even longer. And I did do some podcast interviews, but eventually I started feeling like, okay, I kind of miss Instagram. Like I do want to be somewhere. And so I just went back to Instagram. But now, I mean, that was a few years ago. And now I'm like on LinkedIn. I tried to do TikTok again. Like it sucks you back in because you're like, okay. You listen to a podcast and it sounds so cool and the person loves TikTok and you're like, I should give TikTok another chance. And so my coach was like, do not delete it. You have some videos up there, let it ride, but you don't have to add to it. And because I was like, I'm off. I got to get back off. Only Instagram feels good to me at this point. And maybe LinkedIn. LinkedIn still is like, I think becoming more interesting to me. So but just do what you want.
That's good. Yeah. And you may go through seasons where that changes, where you're like, I don't want to do this. I want to take a break for a little while. I want to see if I can miss it. You can always add things back in. Cutting something out, like for now is not forever. That's my favorite thing in working with students. You can undo just about any decision that you make, obviously, except for, like life-ending ones. Can't really undo that one. But I used to tell people, I literally 1 year just renewed a lease. And then my then partner and I decided to move in together. And I had to break the lease. Was it painful? Yes. Was it expensive? Yes. Was it something that I was able to take care of in an hour and then be done with? Absolutely not. But it was a decision that could be made and then be unmade. And that, you have more power to do that in your business than you think. You don't have to agonize over things. And in fact, making expensive mistakes like that will teach you to trust your gut a little bit more the next time. Like, I knew I probably should have gone month to month and waited to see because I got the indication that we were probably going to be moving in together, but then I wasn't sure. And then I was like worried about affordability. So I just went ahead and said, nah. And then it cost me a hell of a lot more to have made that move instead of just like letting it ride. So,
Yeah. Well, and 6 weeks off. I feel like as like sad as it sounds, like nothing really changed. I don't think anyone really even missed me that much. It was like, oh my gosh, it just like went on without me. And then when I came back, it was like I had been off for like a weekend and it was 6 weeks. It was like, you can take a break and it will be fine. And it was like a lot more clarity for me. Like you're saying, consuming it, when you scroll Instagram and everybody's like, do this hashtag routine, do this thing, do this thing, do this thing. And you're like, but the last person said do this. And you're like, oh my gosh, now I have no idea what to do. I'm paralyzed. Just get off.
It was interesting. I was talking to actually another designer last night at dinner. And I had told her I have all these crazy ideas for stuff I want to do. But then I get that old corporate voice in my head that says, that's unprofessional. Like I wanted to make a stupid TikTok talking about my love of food as Whitney Houston would, which would be like, eat with somebody. I really want to snack with somebody. Yeah. with somebody who loves food, right? Just make my own version of that. And I'm like, I can't figure out how the hell to tie that into a business context and be professional. And she was like, why do you have to be? And I was like, right. I teach this stuff all the time and I still fall into this fucking trap.
Yep. Me too. It'll get you. Well, please make that TikTok. The world needs that TikTok. Just saying.
All right. Maybe I just need to go out there and throw myself off the cliff and go ahead and do that.
I mean, if you need me to like be in it too, I can snack on something. I mean, we could team up, maybe. Who knows?
I'll tag you and we can stitch it.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh man, I just realized that we've been going at this for like an hour. So I think we need to set up a part 2 because it sounds like ranting galore is what's going to happen when we get together. And I love it.
Yes, I'm here for it. Snacks and ranting. I'm here for
snacks and ranting and random Whitney Houston interludes. Like, what more is there that you could ask for in a single podcast episode? So I'm going to cut it a little bit short, but we're going to say that we're going to do a follow-up here and now. I'm going to promise one. So tell us a little bit more about your business and where people can connect with you and learn more about you.
All right. So like I said, the main place I hang out is on Instagram, and my name over there is the Deanna Seymour. I don't know why I would like turned weird for a second. I was like, got all nervous about my Instagram handle. And yeah, I'm just like the girl to go to if you want to really push the envelopes with your visuals. If you go to my website, deannaseymour.com, you will see that it is all kinds of colors. Like you just did a Whitney Houston reference. I feel like I have a little Janet Jackson reference on my website. So if you're ready to let your freak flag fly and you want your visuals to match it, I'm your gal. Just saying.
Mm-hmm. This is the kind of business that I want more of. Weird and wonderful and freak flags everywhere. Yes, let's do it. We're going to make it happen. So thank you so much for being on the show. I'm going to make sure that they have clickable links in the show notes. And stay tuned for part 2, everyone.
Oh my gosh. Thanks for having me.
That's all for now. If you want to keep that kick-ass energy high, please take a minute to share this episode with someone that might need a high-octane dose of "you can do it." Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Permission to Kick-Ass podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you stream your podcasts. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and I'm here rooting for you. Thanks for listening, and let's go kick some ass.